Hello, it's Brother Gerald, YouTube philosopher, and it is February the 10th, 2016. And we're going to go through a conversation I had on my very first video. Welcome, atheists and scientists. And I'm having a discussion with a gentleman named Gilliam89. And he and I had a healthy little discussion. It's about 50 posts in, back and forth. We were going back and forth, 50 posts. And so we're at a point in our conversation where the rubber's about to hit the road. So he's basically challenging the premise that God exists and, you know, he knows it. He doesn't agree that he knows it. And then we got into a discussion dealing with science and how scientists are able to know what they know and do what they do. And I said, scientists know what they know because God has given them the ability to know these things. He's given them the ability to grab a hold of the beaker and the test tube and grab a hold of these instruments to reach consistent logical conclusions about this world, because the world is order. And we see in passages in the Bible where God says, let any man that wants wisdom ask of me, and I will give it to them without, really being concerned about how they're coming at him. So for somebody that says, I want to know what is at the university, the very act of him going over there is telling God, I want to learn, I want to know some things. So he goes over there and God gives him what he's looking for. And if he is looking to find out if God is really about all of these things, God will give him that too. But the thing is, you have to ask God for these things. But God has already given you certain things. He says, I let the rain fall on the just and the unjust. So if this God of the Bible is showing any partiality to where he's like, you know what, I got a chosen people, and I'm not going to let the rain fall on the enemies of my people, then, you got to kind of maybe scratch your head. But he has the power to even do that. And if he does, he's doing it for a particular purpose. Now, you may disagree with all of that, but on what basis do you say that's wrong? That's, is it because you don't understand? That would be a reasonable explanation. I think that's wrong, man, because that don't make sense to me. But, is it true that everything that is in this reality has to make sense to you? I think that's kind of arrogant. Here it is. Everybody is accusing the Christian of being arrogant to declare the truth that God exists. But I'm saying, man, you guys are being super duper arrogant for your ignorance. You are ignorant and you're arrogant on top. That don't make no sense. If I'm knowledgeable, you might perceive what I know as being arrogant. Like if you didn't learn calculus, or you didn't know, let's just say you didn't learn something basic like the Pythagorean theorem, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And I do all these calculations, and then I go out to the job site and I tell you, based on the calculations here, this corner is not a perfect right angle. Oh man, how do you know? I said, well, I did some calculations to figure it out. I didn't see you do them. I don't understand. How can you do a calculation to determine this? Well, I brought my tape measure out and I see we got this and this. And then we got this measurement here. Man, I don't understand none of that. Well, does that really take away from me using the Pythagorean theorem to figure out the carpenter screwed up? The building's not square. Things aren't as the blueprints say they're supposed to be? Is it really, does you being understanding, does that really take away from the truth of what is manifestly obvious? No. Okay, so let's just jump right into it and listen to what Jillian is trying to say here. And so he basically saying that he is... Here we go. He says, Jerry, you're saying something's wrong with the scientist who doesn't accept the biblical answer when he has no answer himself. Well, you're absolutely wrong. He's taking a position. He's standing on a square. Okay, so he's standing on a square that what I'm telling him, this is how it is wrong. That the scientist has no basis for objecting, and now he's objecting to me saying that a scientist is wrong. So I'm absolutely wrong. He said we can absolutely cross off answers we know are false even when we know what the true answer actually is. You don't know what item I have in my pocket now. You have no clue whatsoever, but you know for certain that it isn't the Amazon River or computer that you're reading this comment on or drawing a squared circle. Now, I did another video where I blew that one out of the water because I was able to demonstrate that here it is. You're telling me that based on this argument of, well, Jerry, if I ask you what's in my pocket, well, you know from the experience that if I say the Amazon River, we got this list of possibilities. So the Amazon River could not qualify as getting on that list of things in the pocket. So now he tries to transfer that relationship, that physical relationship, to a metaphysical reality, which it would work. But the question that I'm asking is, if this relationship that you demonstrate between physical objects, such as my pocket being a certain dimension and the Amazon River being another, how does that relate to the Big Bang Theory? Because the Big Bang Theory says that the scientists, the trusted scientists, can not only fit the Amazon River, not only my pocket, not only the planet, not only the other planets, the stars, the space. He can pack all of that into a singularity, a point no smaller than a pin. So I don't see the relationship. So how does this give the scientists, on the list of possibilities, God created the heavens and the earth. How is he able, and this was declared in the Bible, how can he cross that out based on this relationship that you just stated? I don't see how that follows. And he never came back. He went off into a whole nother realm because he didn't want to go any further because he saw the foolishness of his view. So now he's going to jump off into something else instead of, man, hold your position. Let's keep going. If your position is solid and it can be and it will refute mine, just stay there a little bit longer. I think he jumped off a little too soon because we could have went a little bit further had he really chose to think. But my thing is, ultimately, he might continue down the road, but eventually he'll get to a point where he will not be able to hold his position. And that's my whole philosophy. I'm going to stand on a rock solid foundation, which is God's word. And if anybody can push me off, fine. But my thing is, I'm going to use my mind to think, because that's one of the keys that the Bible says. The Bible says that all the treasures of wisdom are hidden in Christ. So God tells me about this unbelieving person. He's basically saying, look, I'm going to give you words that which he will have no power to oppose. And the reason why God is going to tell me that is because he knows me and he knows him. And he knows this reality because he set it all up. So he's going to say they're not going to be able to oppose it because I never gave it to them to understand. You understand it and they will acknowledge it. Now, whether they actually go beyond acknowledging and actually operating in that truth is totally up to God and that person. But it's more up to God than the person, which is really a scary thing to think about. But the long and the short of it is, my job is to just teach, and that's it. Deliver the word, and God says the rest is on, those people. So here we go. So I said, so he basically talks to me, and I basically tell him, hey, I'm sorry that I took so long to get back to you, but I've had a few little business things going on that I needed to address immediately. I couldn't play around with, making no posts. So I'm back here making some posts because it's at a point now where everything's going to work out. But I've done everything I could do. So today is a day of kind of me relaxing till noon. And then from noon on, I'm going to put in a little more work till 3. And then after that, I'm back on the YouTube chat and observing and listening and getting things going. So I said, in an earlier post, I gave you a demonstration, but you didn't even catch it. I will give it to you now so you can see just what I did is the very thing the atheistic scientist does. The only difference is I'm going to point out the move. They don't want you to notice. Now, here is the earlier post. I, like the God of the Bible, teach that all, not some, of the treasures of knowledge and all wisdom are hidden in Christ Jesus, the promised Messiah. Now, my question to you is, first, are you a scientist? If you say yes, you must be willing to subject your mind to the rules and regulations of the method of science, or what is known as the scientific method, right? Now, to get moving forward, I'm now leaving the method of science to assume something about you that is necessary to say what I'm going to say. So now I assume you agree, and with that I proceed to demonstrate how what I asserted about Jesus is true. Are you ready? And he said, yeah, I'm ready, tell me. But he didn't even notice all this movement that I was doing prior to getting to a point where I'm ready to actually demonstrate. But the very movement that I was doing was the demonstration. That's the whole point of the whole game for me. You know, and this is the point that I'm trying to point out. This is what scientists do. They don't point out what they're doing. They, let you come in assuming that they got the answer and they know it all, and you go with it. And you're going to see he's going with some assumptions about me based on what scientists have told him. And he trusted and believed what they told him, and he's acting on those things. His actions are going to tell me more than what his words are telling me. So he said, I'm ready. But he wasn't thinking because he didn't see the move. And I just pointed it out to you. I hope you see it. If you didn't, rewind the tape, go back about 2 minutes, and I'll tell it to you again. So I said, first, forget about my demonstration regarding Jesus for now. That we will get around to it if necessary. If I need to, I will go there. I'll show you. You want proof? I will show it to you. The whole thing is, if you don't need proof, because here it is, everything that you built your life on is on a foundation that needed to be assumed. So many things need to be assumed about it for you to go forward and feel good about what you're doing. If that was the position that you actually took, and I'm able to show you that, then I'm going to ask you, well, you accepted all these things without a demonstration. So, and that led you to a point where you're starting to ask me questions. So if your philosophy is founded on a whole bunch of assumptions requiring no demonstration, then why are you all of a sudden jumping onto this square that, you're not going to take me out of this philosophical view that I have unless you demonstrate a reason for it. And I'm saying, well, wait a second. You got to your view through assumption and no demonstration. And I'm going to show you all these assumptions that you had to do to get where you are at to ask these questions. So if all of this, you had to walk up the assumption staircase to get to a platform of saying this is how it is, then I'm basically saying, can you demonstrate this top step, or maybe even the bottom step? Maybe, I don't know, maybe the middle. I don't know which step I want to go to, but let me just ask you, can you demonstrate why you needed to do this? Because I don't think you did. Okay? So notice the part where I asked you if you are a scientist. I don't know at the point of asking if you are a scientist or not. So I don't know. That's a question that remains unresolved. He knows. And the only way I'll know is if he tells me. The only way for me to know is for you to answer the question directly. I cannot guess in answering the question due to my possibly not answering the question accurately. The only way for my answer to be 100% correct is to have you tell me. Now, I can assume things about you, which I did, and that enabled me to go forward in my scientific working out to figure out the answer. Is this guy a scientist? If I did not assume, I would have no way to get to work on the question. Are you a scientist or not? And I wouldn't be able to do it as a scientist. Now look at what follows. Does any of my work and what I'm doing regarding the question of you being a scientist or not have anything to do with you? You are not involved to any degree because of the necessary assumption used to go to work. But why should you not be involved when what I want to know is specific to you? Don't you think if you're going to study a particular question, if you have direct access to the answer to take that direct route, then speculate. Will making the assumption promise to guarantee the true answer? So too. So now after all these questions, I'm basically showing, so too. Excuse me. So too with the trusted scientist. He has to make many. Here we go. So too with the trusted scientist. He has to make many assumptions to get to a point of working. And he's working hard. In working, he is exercising his mind and his experiences to reach conclusions. But in the very act of doing these things, he has demonstrated that he knows and trusts God. Because he knows out of nothing, nothing comes. He knows that information comes from minds. He knows that the coordination of minds require a universal mind that is not subject to death to maintain the continuity of experience from one generation of minds to the next. The trusted scientist knows that he had nothing to do with the physical objects existing, both types, inanimate, solids, liquids, and gases, and animate objects, bugs, plants, animals, people, etc. He knows he is dependent by needing food, air, water, clothing, shelter, and he knows by the very taking of every breath and by the very eating of food to live, he is acknowledging that those actions are only possible by that ability to do them was also something he had nothing to do with, and expresses his reliance on that which everything relies, which is God. So he's dependent, showing all this dependence, but he's just assuming it's just the way it is. Why I gotta eat bananas? Why can't I eat poison ivy? Why can't I eat doo-doo? You know, he knows not to eat doo-doo, and he knows poison ivy is not nutritious for the body. So, you know, why is it the way it is? Why is this so? He knows a lot of stuff, but he knows so much he can become foolish in his imagination. I'm going to show you that. Let's keep reading. And now you have no excuse, just as Romans 1 teaches. Why did you forget? You trusted and believed the atheistic scientist with his showing you skill and command over creation, instead of thinking for yourself and looking with the eyes God gave you to see, to understand that the trusted scientist's work has nothing to do with answering the question that God and creation declares and God claimed. You may ask, how is this possible? Because the power demonstrated in nature and the many minds in this world requires that from which these things come from to have and possess the ability to communicate if we are to receive that ability also. The Bible has a view. What does man have that was not given to him? If he has the ability to think, then he had to receive that ability and power from something that also has the ability to think. Now, what has the ability to think may be superior, but it definitely will not be inferior. Let me say that again. Man's ability to think and understand things will possibly be equal, but it won't be superior to that from which it came from. It will never be superior. And the reason why it won't be superior is because here it is. We're asking questions about things we don't know. So if we don't know some things, we are already in an inferior position of knowledge. Okay, let's continue. God created man to have dominion in this reality. The scientists speak of the anthropic principle. The trusted scientist says that it appears that the universe knew man was coming. The God of the Bible declares man to be created to have dominion on this earth. So now the trusted scientist tacitly agrees with God. He tacitly agrees. He's kind of nodding his head. You know what? I can agree with that, but my assumptions are going to pull me away from even going there. Okay? And this particular God said that he gives gifts without repentance. Once you got it, he won't take it back. But you can relinquish it to someone else. And this is the story that the Bible teaches. Man was given dominion over this world. But he listened to this devil, this serpent in this story, and he relinquished control and authority over the world. Now, the funny thing is, we read in the New Testament where Jesus is being tempted of the devil. And the devil says, all of these kingdoms, one of the three temptations. One of these, all of these kingdoms, I will give them to you if you just bow down and worship me. So Jesus didn't say, no, they're not yours. I disagree. I reject that premise. No, Jesus basically said, hey, I can't worship you because you're not God. And that's what the Bible declares, that only God is deserving of true worship. So let's get back here. So the scientists speak of the anthropic principle. The trusted scientist says that it appears that the universe knew man was coming. The God of the Bible declares man to be created to have dominion on this earth. So now the trusted scientist tacitly agrees with God. And this particular God said he gives gifts without repenting. Once you got it, he won't take it back, but you can relinquish it to someone else. This is why he says that God's love falls like rain on the just and the unjust. So too, God allows men to believe lies, indulge in many pursuits, including forgetting about God. And I see no reason why the trusted scientists would have to make so many unnecessary assumptions in order to do the work scientists do. Assume God, the true God, and the need for the multiplication of assumptions is reduced, which is Occam's razor. You say that ancients got it wrong. I say the trusted scientist needs to demonstrate what is true before declaring an answer to be false. So now my point, if you say I must demonstrate to prove and justify one point of my theory, which is a proposition stating that this is the case. I'm stating that the case is this world was created by God and it's the God of the Bible. It's not a guessing game on which God did it. You want to have a guessing game about that? Then bring these other gods and let's talk about what they say and what they command. And then we'll go from there. So, if you say I must demonstrate, improve, and justify one point of my theory, the proposition stating that this is the case, then you also must require the trusted atheistic scientist to prove and justify his need to assume all the many things he does. Because if you don't make him demonstrate, you would be a hypocrite to require demonstration of me. And we know hypocrisy amounts to lying, and lying is saying something is not true. So we're trying to get to truth. So we don't want to be a hypocrite. So I've demonstrated that in order for a theory or a proposition to be true, it can have no hint of hypocrisy. You can't require of me something that is lacking in your own philosophy. So here he comes back to me. I say, I know this is a long reply, but I'm going to do a video of this conversation. Here the video is. So I'm being truthful in what I'm doing. So he says, no, do not apologize, Gerald, for taking so long. I understand that you have other things to do. As I said, I wrote primarily so you didn't work in vain waiting for my response. But on to it. My response is actually really short. You said that you were going to make a demonstration. You've made just an assumption. You have said that it is a necessary assumption. If you said that according to Occam's razor, it's the smaller assumption. If you tried to boost the assumption by saying that the trusted scientist makes assumptions too, it's still an assumption, not a demonstration as you said you would make through the scientific method. I could just leave my response at that, but I'll add to it. That said, it's not a necessary assumption. As I said, no scientist has ever needed any God to balance any equation, and no one needs belief in a God to live life or to make actions. It's not the smaller assumption either. I said I see no reason why the trusted scientists would have to make so many unnecessary assumptions in order to do the work scientists do. What many assumptions? There's only one assumption that needs to be made for scientific work. The world I observe is real. So he's declaring the only assumption I need to make is the world I observe is real. That's it. God is not a smaller assumption than that single assumption. You need to assume that it is possible that anything exists in addition to the physical world. Then assumptions about what exists there, specifically a God, that this God can exist without a creator or cause, is able to do all the things you are trying to explain, including creating the first living things, creating purpose, controlling afterlives, etc. And in your case, you need to make assumptions about which God is the true God, and you can have that conversation with Jews and Muslims and Hindus till the cows come home. This is not a reduced assumption compared to the world we observe is real. And regarding the assumption that you think scientists make, in addition to that, for instance, to get the Big Bang theory or evolution, well, I've set the discussion aside completely, as you remember, by rejecting every bit of your argument's sake. And I've always said that these are things I don't believe strongly, precisely because I haven't done the testing myself. The hypocrisy of double standard you mentioned doesn't result in me accepting your assumption. It results in me rejecting the assumption of science. But most importantly, you set to make a demonstration through the scientific method and did no such thing. Assume God, the true God, you said. If you need to assume it, I think we're done here. Now, he started and he was very, very good in presenting his view. But one thing I'm going to point out to you is that at the start of the conversation, I asked him, do you know, yes or no, whether God exists? Can you prove that, God doesn't exist? And we know that we can't prove a negative. It's philosophically foolish to declare something to be not true when the possibility of it can be. And so, anyway, let me just go ahead and show you how subtle he jumped from one square to the next. And you're going to see it in my response. So, and I'm going to tell you right off the top. So, here we go. Okay, now pay close attention to all that has gone before in the last two posts, yours and mine. I'm not assuming anything. I'm not assuming anything. I'm declaring the God of the Bible is a given. You may disagree, but on what basis do you have for taking such action? And this is the point y'all need to pay attention to, that I chose to look at the problem that he presented to me from his perspective. I asked you questions. Where did we and the universe come from? Why are we here? Is there life after death? You declared to me that you don't know. So you tell me that I don't know. I'm ignorant, Gerald. I don't know. I don't know, Gerald. On the basis of my asking you those questions, he's now assuming, you now assume I'm asking you to give me that which I lack. But maybe, pay attention, Julian, carefully, closely, maybe, just maybe, I'm asking you to see if you understand the truth about life and know what I know. It's real simple. See, it's not a, you're just like me, Gerald, and I know this. No, you don't. How do you know this? The only way you know what I know is what I declare to you. To be in agreement with what you say or to be in disagreement. But the whole thing is, if I declare to you this truth, that God is this, and you, right after I asked you, do you know? And you say, no, I don't know. And then I declare to you, and then you say, I'm wrong. I'm like, wait a second. You just told me you didn't know. Okay, so here we go. But maybe, just maybe, I'm asking you to see if you understand the truth about life and know what I know. You said that the trusted scientist does not need fill in the blank with whatever you want. The moment the trusted scientist decides to act, he is demonstrating that he is relying on fill in the blank with whatever you want. He's powerless to explain why he needs to fill in the blank with whatever you want. But taking action to reach out for things that he knows he had nothing to do with creating or existing, using a body that he knows he also had nothing to do with creating or existing, demonstrate his acknowledging what God has revealed in creating, and also told the trusted scientist's ancestors long before the trusted scientist came along to start making or doing anything. When the scientist can't explain or act without relying on whatever you want to fill in the blank with, he will be true to the game of saying, I don't need God to balance any equation. So what does the trusted scientist have that he can say belongs to him? If you are willing to assume the trusted scientist was born and that is a trusted and accepted universal given, then the trusted scientist relied on physical things to account for bringing him into this world. But physical things, all that he encounters in this world, but is physical things all that he encounters in this world? He encounters abstract entities like his imagination, concepts like logic and law. These entities are manifested in operation of physical things, similar to the software in a computer. So with that as a background, what does the scientist have that he can say is his? He has no answer for explaining his existence or why things appear to be the way they appear. He comes into this world naked with only his life as a possession and leaves unable to take that body which represented him as he goes. Where I come from, people say, give credit where credit's due. What is responsible for you coming into this world? You might say my mother, my father, and you honor them by acting honorable in your dealings so as to not embarrass your folks or give them a card and visit them on Mother and Father's Day. But where did they come from? You can use a scientific method to get back to the first ancestor, but who or what sets things up for all of those things to happen? He has no answer, but you trust him to tell you, Jillian, this is how it is. Don't pay no attention to the trusted scientist relying on all these things. His mother, father, air, food being given to me, and the world being set up the way it is. And this is the trusted scientist. He's speaking. The trusted scientist is speaking. He said, Julian, pay no attention to my storytelling changing to become better at figuring out and understanding really the way things are. Oops. As a trusted scientist, I hope Jillian doesn't catch that I already told him I know how things is or how it is. Who gave the trusted scientist these things? Why does he trust food to keep him alive? Who or what does he have to thank for all of these things? Does he even have to be thankful? Who or what gets the credit? He gets a lot of credit discovering the truths of the world. What does it mean to discover? Think. He gets a lot of credit and most of society valuing his work and trusting his storytelling abilities. Does he explain how he is able to do that? No, he's too busy telling an interesting story and receiving praise for everything, his knowledge, skill, insight, etc., including his life that he must leave behind in death. He told you one day we will discover our reason for being here. You stand over his deathbed. He takes his last breath. Now he's gone. What power does he have to demonstrate now? Shake the corpse. Tell him now to balance the equation. You say he doesn't need anything. Have him do it now. Make him demonstrate now with this independent power. He can't. And do you know why? He is now powerless. The power he has is now removed. If it truly was his, he would be able to stop it as easy as his balancing the equation on whiteboard chalkboard at the university. Now, I also noticed, Jillian, that you were hedging your bet. But before I go forward with that, I'm basically showing you guys are watching these people up here at the university making all these discoveries and taking claim. And he said, man, I don't need God for nothing. But these people get old and they die. So you go out to that funeral, you knock on Albert Einstein's headstone. Tell him to come up and demonstrate to us what he wrote in this book. He don't have the power, and he's going to remain down in that hole until God brings him up to be judged on Judgment Day. Okay, so getting back to it. Now, Jillian, I also noticed that you were hedging your bet. You wanted to be a scientist to stand on the square of everything the scientist holds in opposition to the God of the Bible. The trusted scientist view is dead, like the scientist will be sooner or later. Then you move off that square to enter the metaphysical world of religion. And that's a logical and reasonable move, and that you know this universe is not eternal. It had a start. So what started it? Something metaphysical. So now you see a host of metaphysical options. Which one to choose? Do I choose pragmatically because religions appear to have regional domination? I'm destined to be a particular one. Like people say that in India, most of the people are Hindu there. So is it by virtue of my being born in India that I'm going to be a Hindu? Am I just stuck? Is this metaphysical thing just kind of a guessing game, so to speak? Do I choose pragmatically? Or is there another means to determine the true one from all the choices, or conclude they are all false? If you say, I don't know, Brother Gerald, if you agree with what I'm saying, with what is presented and where we are in this conversation, then we can move forward. So tell me what you think. No more guessing or jumping around from one philosophy to another. You are not moving to resolve the controversy. I want an answer. So here it is. We're talking, and he's jumped from being a scientist to not being a scientist. He's jumped on kind of showing me some weaknesses maybe in my view, but his showing me those weaknesses is coming from a position of not knowing. He doesn't know. But the thing is, I'm sitting there saying it would be weak based on the assumption that you had knowledge and you're coming with a hammer to chip away at my foundation, but you don't have nothing in your hand to work with. So now I said, I have an answer, but I'm open to hear what you have to say. My confidence of my answer being correct is that with all of the discussions, I view them as testing of the theory. No one has yet to move me off my square, my position. They all hop around one philosophical view to the next, not noticing in doing so is proving the truth of my view. This is the whole game, fellas and ladies. I'm standing on a rock solid foundation, and Jesus said that you build on rock, you build on what he is establishing here, you build on a rock. He said you build on anything else, you build on sand. So I didn't need too much more than to test what he told me to build upon. And I tell you, my life has been rooted and grounded solidly. I know how to love my brother. I know how to love my wife. I know how to make my marriage whole. I know how to make my family whole. I know what I need to do for my children and my grandchildren. And with that being said, I hope that you guys will start cracking open that Bible, stop believing it to be a myth book, and if it is, as a scientist, prove what this book is saying is a myth and show us what the truth is without a whole bunch of assumptions. And when that, you'll be able to think clearly. You'll be able to think better, think clearly, and be blessed. I know I'm put that square peg in a round hole because this is the end of the video. So God bless you all, and I really hope and pray that you do this edifies the believer and gives them cause to be strengthened in what may be something that caused them pause or to have doubt. Peace.